Hey, caregiver. This is the place where faith meets caregiving and caregivers. Find strength to keep going, keep pushing, keep loving, and keep caring.
Hey, caregivers. How's everybody out there doing? Hope y'all are having a great evening. I'm going to take just a few moments and get everybody time to come on and share the live. I'm going to share it myself. And do me a favor, take a moment if you don't mind and go ahead and share the live. I'm going to take this moment right now. So before we get into this conversation, do me a favor and go ahead and share, tag, subscribe to the channel, follow the channel. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe. If you're on Facebook, go ahead and follow. And then tag a caregiver, tag a family member, tag a friend. It doesn't have to be a caregiver, just anybody that you know that's caring, or if you're just a friend of the podcast, go ahead and share it with somebody. I promise you, the information that you're going to find on tonight or hear on tonight is going to be beneficial, whether you are a caregiver or you just love somebody who is. So take that moment real quick and go ahead and share it for me. And we will move on in just a moment. Hope y'all have had a great Thursday. My days are a little bit off. Today is Thursday. I hope y'all have had a great Thursday. And before I go into the podcast, I do want to take a moment. I know some of you saw my post even on yesterday with my mom and just asking you all to pray for her, pray for me. And so I want to take a moment before I go into this podcast to say thank you for every person that responded to that post. And as I always say, when I share these posts because I share the journey. I like for other people to know what this journey is like. I don't want to fool anybody into making you think that just because you see me and you see that things are well, and they are, but there are moments that we do have. But even with that, I want to be able to show people, this is what caring for somebody with dementia is like. There are some highs, there's some lows. Yesterday was a roller coaster of just about everything you can think of. And so, thank you for those of you who just took the time to say a prayer, took the time to just say, hey, I'm thinking about you, whatever. It does mean a whole lot. And so thank you for that. All right. And so what we're going to do, y'all, we're going to go ahead and get into this episode. Of course, this is the My Favorite Girl Caregivers Corner podcast. And this is a place where we strengthen, inspire, empower caregivers through real, personal, and impactful conversations. Of course, my name is Priscilla Jean-Louis, and I am your host. And listen, whether you're caring for a parent, a spouse, a child, a friend, or a neighbor, or if you're just a friend of the podcast, I'm so glad that you have joined me on this evening, joined us on this evening for this podcast. And so again, say hello as you're coming in, and then go ahead and share the podcast. Share it on your page, share it with your network. You can text it if you want to. You can text it to a friend, email it to a friend, however you have to do it. But do me a favor and go ahead and do that. And then also, while you're doing that, I want you to also remember that you can also listen to the podcast on one of the platforms, one of our platforms that are out there. You sit on there. You can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and of course on the website at www.priscillajjohnlouis.com. You can go back after this and you can hear that as well. So when you go out there, you can also subscribe as well and share that. Listen, as caregivers, we spend so much time making sure that everybody else is okay. We make sure that the person that we're caring for is okay. And a lot of times we tend to neglect ourselves. And I myself, as a caregiver, I am very guilty of that very same thing. Very guilty of making sure my mom is okay, making sure everybody else is okay. And then, I kind of catch up with self-care whenever I can. But what I'm realizing even the more, and I like to share with others as well, is that as caregivers, Not only do we need that support, but we deserve it. We deserve support as well as caregivers. And so tonight's conversation is all about just that, being able to talk about supporting those who care. Our guest has dedicated her career to serving others and helping caregivers find practical, meaningful support in a community that understands the caregiver journey. Hey, Tiffany, I see Tiffany is on here. She is actually out of California and she herself is caring for her mother. So, Tiffany, thank you so much for joining us on tonight. And I want to say this as well, even as we're having this conversation on tonight, the reason why we do it live, the reason why I decided to take this season live is because I get questions all the time from different ones that call me or I see them, and they're asking me different questions as it relates to prior podcasts. And so I wanted to be able to allow you, as those that are viewing, to ask you questions. You have the professional here. You have the person here on the podcast. So whatever questions you might have, you have that opportunity. So we invite you, even as we have this conversation, to go ahead and join us in the conversation. Join the conversation, ask your questions, make your comments, what have you. And I'm going to take that time to pause and we're going to answer whatever questions you have. So this is not just the two of us, but this is you all as well. This is all of our conversation. All right. And so before I get into this conversation, I do want to give her her proper introduction. So I'm going to read a little bit of her bio. Justice Lewis is a dedicated social worker committed to advancing health equity and empowering individuals, families, and communities. She earned her bachelor's and master's degrees in social work from Savannah State University, including international study in Ghana and Liberia, focused on global practice with children and families. Her experience includes behavioral health, case management, and work in memory disorder clinic, supporting individuals and families navigating Alzheimer's disease and other cognitive conditions. She was hired at Big Bend Hospice as a clinical hospital liaison, where she served as a bridge between hospital teams, patients, and families, providing education about hospice services, coordinating care transitions, and ensuring patients' goals and values were honored. She has since transitioned to Caregiver Resource Coordinator, where she equips caregivers with practical tools, resources, and education to support their well-being. Justice is committed to reducing health disparities and delivering compassionate, culturally responsive care. Justice, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So happy that you could join me on tonight. And I met Justice a few years ago, actually, when she was with the Tallahassee Memory Care Memory Disorder Clinic. That's when we first met, and found her to be an absolute great person. And I'm excited to have her on, even though she's in a whole different role now. But I can tell you that her passion and her compassion for what she does is great. It's second to none. She and Whitney, man, they make a great team. Even though they work in two different places, they make one of the greatest teams that there is. So I'm glad that you were able to join me on tonight. And so we're going to go right ahead and jump into our conversation for tonight. And so before we talk about the incredible caregiver programs that you have there, that you lead, I want to start this conversation by allowing our listeners to get to know you, Justice, the person that's behind the work. And so I want to know, first of all, what inspired you to pursue social work?
Funny story. So going back to childhood, I come from a family that's always been involved in the community in some type of way. I grew up in the church. My mom's a pastor, so I've always had my hand in the community in some type of way. But I'm an empath. And so even at a very early age, I just knew that I wanted to help people. So fast forward to going to college. When I first chose my major, I picked social work. And then as I got closer to going, I was like, maybe that's not what I want to do. Because at that time, I will be honest, I was like, I don't want to deal with welfare, child welfare. Because, everyone thinks social work is, oh, I'm going to your house to take your children. And that's
Yeah.
not what it is at all. And so I changed my major to criminal justice. And so I did criminal justice that first semester. And I was like, nope, this is not for me. And I switched back to social work, and I just been in my field, the passion, ever since. I had a very great community of professors that poured into me, professionally and personally, and just pushed me to be the best version of myself. So I definitely always give kudos to the social work department at Savannah State, because I don't think I will be here without, the education, knowledge, but most of all, the support that they gave me during that time. So that's just a little bit about what inspired me. But I think most of all, it's just my heart. I love people. I love doing that boots on the ground work. I don't have to be in some fancy office. I'd rather connect with you in the community and just have a conversation, because I feel that's where the most impact is.
Yeah.
Take that uppity professional hat off and just talk with the person, because you learn so much about them. And then also it helps you to assist in knowing what resources they may need.
Love it. And I never knew until you just said that your mom was a pastor. I had no idea.
Yes. I actually
It's
see my
always
aunt is
amazing.
online now, but yes. So I've been in the
Yeah.
church my entire life.
And I love that right there.
Yes.
And it's always amazing to me how God always bring things full circle. When you realize
Absolutely.
that, okay, you realize when you look back that you've been doing this literally your whole life. And he just
Yeah.
brings us to that place of purpose. And, you talked about your professors there at the university. Was there like one particular instance or one experience that made you realize, like, you know what, this is it, this is definitely where I'm supposed to be, what I'm supposed to be doing, where you had absolutely no question about it? Was that type of experience?
Absolutely. So at Savannah State, we do this program called the VA Stand Down. So it's for veterans, and it's like a 2-day event where they go to the Civic Center in Savannah, and we provide resources. The homeless population comes in, they can get, haircuts, hairdos, washing, have access to shower, getting clean clothes. And I think through that experience, I want to say that was my sophomore year, the very first time that I participated, I realized this is exactly where I was supposed to be. At the time, I didn't know what population, because as we know, social work is such a broad field. But
Yeah.
I knew during that time, like, this is where I was supposed to be, serving others, because taking myself out of it and just putting myself in their shoes. Because, we may see homeless people all the time and not understanding, like, how did they get there? So being able to connect with them, hear their stories, but pour back into them, it confirmed everything, for me. But I would say my professor wasn't just one, it was probably a few of them that maybe saw the potential in me before I saw it in myself. But, I just knew that's exactly, where God has placed me. And then over the years, I was able to find my footing to where the population I was supposed to be in.
Yes, yes, yes. I absolutely love it. And now where we're living in a time where you have so many selfish people, right? You have
Yes.
people that are all about themselves and all about how they can get, how they can gain. It's to have people who really have a heart. And because even in some of these professions, it's really not about the people. It's about
Mhm.
what I can get out of it. And I'm like, social work is one of those ministries, is what I call it, where you find yourself boots on the ground, because
Yeah.
like you said in the beginning, that was the stigma behind social work,
Mhm.
was they're gonna come take my kids, that because that's kind of all we knew about it. But then when you realize that there's so much more, especially when you have a heart and a passion for it. And like I said earlier, I mean, ever since I've known you, I've known that to be exactly who you are. It's always about, how can I help? How can I, provide the resources that are needed? And that's the type of thing that we need in this day and time. Have me, sometimes I think about, maybe I should go back and, get a degree in social? Because I went the criminology route for a whole
Oh,
different reason. And what's funny about it is I actually obtained a degree in criminology because my heart at the time was I wanted to be able to save the kids. I wanted to be a juvenile probation officer. And when I graduated, most of the positions that were available, they were overnight positions. And because I
yeah.
had my oldest daughter, I was like, yeah, I'm not willing to do that. But ironically enough, that's exactly what my oldest daughter is doing right now. She does have a full-time job, but she also has a very thriving teen mentoring program in Orlando that's doing absolutely amazing. And so I said, well, I couldn't do it, but God passed it on, and that's exactly what she's doing. So absolutely love that. And so one thing that really stood out to me too, even as I read your bio, was your study abroad when you went to Ghana and Liberia. And so, how did that experience also shape the way that you view people and your service and your care for other people? Because I know total different world, total different from
Yeah.
America. So, share a little bit about that. How did that shape, your experience and just the way that you view what you do?
Yeah, I would say I was over there for 37 days. And so when I first got there, I was like, "Oh my goodness, was this the right choice?" Because I always tell people when we first arrived in Ghana, we was in Accra, and they started us, I would like to say, at the lowest, living conditions. And then by the end of the trip, we were having like hot water. We were in this nice hotel, but it was kind of like a building thing, So it's like, this is kind of, this is where others live, but also let's show you a different side of it. But it was such an amazing, I would do it maybe all over again, not even a maybe, but I would definitely do it all over again just to interact with the people that are from Ghana and even Liberia. Liberia is a little more Americanized to me. Ghana is that true, African, culture. You may walk around, you see we call it the markets. And so
Okay.
at the markets, you have like everyone selling like different products. Got some amazing shea butter there, So if you're ever looking for that real deal shea butter, that's where you need to go. But and I really appreciate the professors because we had class during the daytime, but then they gave us the opportunity to explore, the area at the evening and nighttime. But during the class time, it was eye-opening most of all because it helped me realize that we're very privileged in America. The things that we take for granted, they don't even have access to. And for example, it can be the simplest thing as having a bathroom to go to. And so we had visited this orphanage, and there wasn't like a bathroom that you see on a regular basis in America. It was like a hole. You had to do your business there. And so in those moments, it helped me practice gratitude most of all, because like I said, the things I took for granted, the things that maybe I was like, oh, I don't care, or I don't have enough of this, in perspective, I realized I'm blessed.
Yeah.
Even when it came to the resources, they don't have a lot of community resources like we have, So, but the social work program there, it was still in the building stages. So they were still coming. We were able to help them, start some programs. My university has a really good connection with the University of Ghana.
Okay.
So the study abroad program is something that they do annually. So we're over there. We're able to work with the faculty, the students, but most of all, the community. And so at one point, I was like, maybe I should try out global social work, but I think I was a little nervous about, leaving my family. But the
Yeah.
experience was, like I said, I don't think I can emphasize it enough how amazing it was. And just, I think everyone should go over there, especially, the African American community. I will always advocate for that. But just to be able to have that was such a blessing. And I'm thankful that my professors pushed me, because maybe a few months before I was like, oh, no, I don't think I can leave the country. And my mom, she was nervous, but I did it, and I would do it again. And I would encourage anyone, if you ever have that opportunity, to definitely give it a try.
Yeah. And so when you say that you all started from the low end and move your way up, you all got to experience that same, being able to go in a hole and that type thing.
Yeah,
Oh
like
yeah, I'm
we were
sure that was
staying
like
in the Oh, absolutely. Yes. We were staying in bungalows. You had like the cot. So we didn't have like a real bed. They were very low to the ground. You had a lot of cold water nights, and then also one thing that I realized when we were in Accra, at a certain time, they would shut off the electricity. So you kind of got to get everything that you need done by like maybe 10 p.m., 11 p.m., and they shut off the electricity throughout the city. And
Oh
then
my.
they'll, of course, restart it the next morning. So it was an adjustment. And then I remember, and I'm going to say this and then we can move forward. We went to an area called Kumasi. And with Kumasi, there was a lot of cultural differences. Like, for example, as a female, I couldn't speak with my left hand if I was talking to a male. So, sometimes we're using our hands as we're communicating. So that one was a stickler for me because I'm like always talking with my hands sometimes. But I'm like, oh gosh, I don't want to be disrespectful. I
Right.
want to make sure I'm honoring their culture. But everyone was welcoming, ready to pour into you. I learned a lot about our history, things that they don't always talk about in like the social study classes growing up in school. We were able to visit Elmina Castle, which was the place where our ancestors were taken before they went off into the Atlantic slave trade. So,
Hmm.
we were able to experience that very emotionally. It was heavy. You could still feel some of that energy there, but it was a great experience and it was very educational. So that was amazing.
Wow. Yeah, I would have been a little nervous too if I was your mom as well. But I think, not I think, I know that a lot of times when you can place yourself where somebody is, I think
Yeah.
it causes you to have a greater level of compassion as well. And you
Yeah.
get to understand because like you said, there's so many things that we take for granted that we don't even, you know, we just don't even think about it. The fact that even, being here, just being able to go into your refrigerator and get food. Shoot, some people just
Yes.
having a house, and I often say, choices. We have clothes. Not only do we have clothes, we have choices. We get to
Mhm.
decide what we want to put on and what we want to eat. And so sometimes when you can place yourself where a person is, that becomes the best experience and it gives you a greater level of passion and compassion
Yes,
because your heart is really
absolutely.
there. So I'm sure that was a great experience. And every now and again, I'm like, yeah, I want to go. And that's your mom, I'm assuming. She said it took lots
Yes,
of
it
prayer.
is.
Mother,
Yeah.
I understand. Mine is in New York right now, so that's not even, that's still in the United States, and I every day. So I get it, but that is an experience that I'm sure that will live with you forever. One that you'll be able to tell your children about for years to come, and probably maybe depending on where the world is in that time, send them over because great experience, and we need to know that type of
Yeah.
stuff. And so,
Yeah.
great, awesomeness. So let's bring you up to where you are now. And so now you are serving as the Caregiver Resource Coordinator for Big Bend Hospice. And I'm always going to give a shout out. I love Big Bend Hospice. I love the work that you all do. Even right now, I am taking part in your services. My mom is actually on hospice, full hospice. And so, I love you all dearly. But in that particular role that you are in now, can you, for those who may not know what that position involves, can you tell us about your role and what it actually looks like in being that caregiver resource coordinator?
Absolutely. So within this role, my focus is pouring into the caregivers, whether you're with hospice, our palliative care program, or you're just a community caregiver. So I spend a lot of my days doing a lot of education. And one of the programs that, and I know we're going to talk about it, but one of the programs that I absolutely love is Powerful Tools for Caregivers. And that's where I get the opportunity to spend 6 weeks with caregiver one day out the week for 90 minutes, talking about different things from reducing stress, building confidence, improving communication, and just giving them opportunity to pour back into themselves. And so I really enjoy that program. And I'm so happy that I was introduced to it during my time at the Memory Disorder Clinic. So when I presented it to my leadership, they was like, absolutely super supportive. Let's bring this program on. And then I didn't realize at the time that our CEO did the program years ago in the early 2000s. So when I mentioned it to him, he was like, yes, let's do it. But it's an awesome program, and it gives the caregivers a time, just a little small break to get away, and they're in a community with other caregivers, because as we know, sometimes as you're on that journey, you feel alone. You may feel like others don't really understand what you're going through, or you may not even understand what you're going through. Every day is a different day. And so just to be able to connect with other caregivers, talk about different strategies that may have worked from them. I know, for example, in our last class, I had a caregiver that mentioned that her mom, there was a lot of fear surrounding taking showers. And her
Okay.
mom had a history of falls. And so she was like, she doesn't like getting in the shower. She always complains about being cold. And so she was like, well, I'm always there. I'm never leaving her in the showers. I was like, well, maybe still do the supervision, but maybe throw the towels in the dryer. So by the time she's getting out of the shower, she has something warm, on her. And so she tried it out for a few days out the week. And she came back. She was like, Justice, that was a game changer. And, it's like the smallest little things that you don't think about that can help someone during their journey. So just to hear that, it warmed my heart, because I didn't
Yeah.
know at the moment if that was going to work for mom or not. But to hear that it did, it was just amazing. So just to be able to spend my time with caregivers, learn their stories. And I always say it's a privilege, to learn about other people, because they don't have to share that. And I
Right.
want to give my hats off to caregivers for even one, reaching out and expressing what you're going through, but also taking the time to research what resources are available, because you may not understand, what's available to you and how to get connected with that. So I spent a lot of time doing that, the education with the classes. During my first class, as we were approaching the 6 weeks, the caregivers like, we don't want to leave you. How are we going to stay connected? And during that class, we realized that a lot of people enjoy fitness. Whether that was walking around, your home, doing yoga, doing like some Tai Chi. And so throughout that class, we decided to start a caregiver walking group. So with the caregiver walking group, we meet every third Saturday of the month at Cascades, and we just walk. It's casual. We have conversation. During the first one, which took place on July 18th, we talked about caregiver guilt. And that's something you and I were talking about a little
Yeah.
bit before we got started, this evening. But the guilt that caregivers have, they may think, if it's time for facility placement, that's not an easy thing. Going
Nope.
from having your loved one, whether it's mom, dad, aunt, uncle, whoever, friend, having them at home, but making the decision to maybe move them to a skilled nursing facility or assistant living facility, that takes a lot of courage, because caregivers may feel like I failed in some type of way. And I always tell them, you're not failing. I think it's more honorable that you're able to see that my loved one deserve a higher level of care, and let me make sure they get the care they need. So that guilt surrounding that, kind of take it off. It's more easier said than done, but try not to internalize that, because you're doing the best thing and they're going to appreciate that in the long run. But
Yeah.
that's just a little scoop, of what I do. Every day is a different day. I get the opportunity to spend time with the marketing department. So I'm out in the community connecting, with caregivers, but also professionals, because there's a lot of resources in our
Yep.
community. My number one partner is, like you said, Whitney with the memory disorder clinic. I absolutely love her. That's a great resource that a lot of people don't know about, and it's open to the community and it's free. And so,
Yes.
just making sure we're being advocates and voice for the voiceless is my main thing when it comes to being in this role.
Yep. And that is one of the purposes of this podcast, because of the fact that there are so many out there. And so, since you mentioned it, I am going to go ahead and mention these now as well. There are flyers out there. So again, powerful tools for caregivers. It gives you an outline right there, but they're also on the website. So you can go to the website. You can also see the Facebook page, My Favorite Girl in Alzheimer's Facebook page. That information is out there as well. But do join on the walks a little bit. They're a little bit early for me sometimes on Saturdays, because I don't have coverage until a little bit later. And so, because of that, there's, those hindrances with that. But I do encourage, because there is strength We hear it all the time. There's strength in numbers, right? There's power and strength in numbers. And so as a caregiver, I've been on this caregiver journey now for 11 years almost. And so, being able to connect with other caregivers, because as you stated, I mean, there's a whole lot, the caregiver guilt, the caregiver, and we'll talk about that a little bit, but isolation, a whole lot of stuff that
Yeah.
comes along with it. And sometimes it takes another caregiver to really understand. People can hear what it's like, but sometimes if you're not there in the trenches or, being the one, I mean, you really have an idea maybe, but not the depths of what it really is. And so being able to connect with those caregivers, and I know that has to be extremely rewarding. On average, about how many people have you graduated or that attend your classes? You all do like a graduation, right? Once they finish
Yes.
the 6 weeks.
Yeah, let me
So
maybe because we've done two classes and we're getting ready for our third class starting in August. I want to say maybe around between 18 and 20.
okay. That's a good
Yeah.
number. And they come together and you're able to form relationships, right? You're able
Yes.
to they meet there, but they're able to connect and know that, hey, I have another person that I can talk to. Those simple things like I haven't thought about warming the towels up. Now you're gonna have me want to go because my mom stays like literally you get her out of the tub and it's like she's crouched over.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tamika can tell you, but you know, but that is another thing. I know for me, I just happen to see it in a Facebook group because my mom has a tendency to like rub on her shoulder. She just rubs. And so, depending on what she's eating, because it goes from her mouth a lot of times straight to that shoulder. And so you're talking about clothes that are stained up and what have you. And I kept saying, I need to just find some bibs. I need to find some bibs. And I think I saw in one of the Facebook groups that I was a part of where someone had taken, some older towels and cut a
Yeah.
circle in the middle and put it over. And so I'm like, what? So I took some of my older towels, yeah, and put it over her head, and now I got a full, it covers everything. But those type things you're able to learn when you come together with other people because, nobody has all of the answers. But if we can
Yeah.
come together and pull what we've done together, then everybody, in my opinion, gets to win. And you get to sit down and share, just that experience that it could have been a hard day. Like I said earlier, yesterday was literally, we talk about Alzheimer's being a roller coaster. Man, my emotions were like some of everywhere yesterday. And even at the best, with all the love in my heart for Jesus and my faith and all that stuff, sometimes, you just have to pull yourself together. And yesterday was just one of those days because, you just can think about a whole lot. And so it's a constant, nope, nope, we're not going to go there. But just even having to, I've had, the hospital bed here since she went on full hospice. But yesterday was the first time that I actually had to raise that bed up and feed
Yeah.
her. And I was like, I don't even know how to really feel about this. Because, so
Yeah.
each time, and that's what we were saying a little bit earlier, each time they change, that means sometimes that the caregiver also there's a different change that comes, there's a different emotion sometimes that comes along with realizing that, wow, we're because I recognize, I strongly believe that she's entering into another stage. And
Yeah.
so as that stuff begins to happen, there's also emotions and all of that can come along with it. And so even being able to connect to other people who have been there or who are there can also be a great help, to the caregiver. So I want to take the opportunity, even as well in this particular moment, to say thank you for the support that you're giving, in providing those groups as well as the walks, because that's an extra day. I know it's another resource. It's something that's resourceful for those who need it, but that's time that you could be, that's a Saturday, You could be home in your bed saying, I done did my 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. But thank you for the heart and the passion to be able to still say, hey, let's all go out and meet here as well. Definitely appreciate that. And since you've been meeting with those groups, what are some of the common needs that you see when you're talking to these caregivers?
I think the struggle with understanding the changes with their loved ones, because for example, with talking about dementia, we know there's different, types of dementia, but focusing more on Alzheimer's, the different stages. And so you have caregivers that have loved ones that may be in the early stage, where another caregiver may be in the later stages. And so there's struggles in every stage of this disease, and it's very progressive. So during the classes, you can see them going back and forth, like, well, how did you deal with this? When mom or dad got to this stage, or how are you able to just take care of yourself still when they're maybe, bedridden? So, just seeing the conversation between them is one of the things, just I think it's more so trying to wrap their head around what's going on with their loved one. Because what I realized with the caregivers is that they're getting educated about this disease as, they are progressing their journey. So they may not have been very knowledgeable about what dementia looks like. They may not understand that some their behavior changes. There may be hallucinations. There may be agitation. I know I had a caregiver once said my mom was the sweetest lady, and all of a sudden she's like cussing like a sailor. And that's an adjustment. Now mom is using all these different words. You're like, wait a minute, what is going on? But helping them understand, like, those are some of the symptoms, of the disease, or, they're not wanting to eat anymore, and not knowing that that part of the brain is not recognizing food. And so just being able to provide not only that social support, but I don't ever say I'm a doctor, but, there is some knowledge I've done through research about the medical side of it. And I think helping them understand that, just like, okay, so I'm not tripping. I know that mom there's changes, or dad, whoever it may be, but just making sure they're feeling supported. But I think a lot of the caregivers are not, and this is just through my experience, they're not really aware of what resources that are available to them. They're like, I'm navigating this journey. It's just me. I don't know, what extra help I can get. And so that leads into the conversation about maybe if it's feasibly, financially hiring some in-home help, because everyone, they may not have that opportunity, to hire in-home help. And so, okay, what are some avenues? And that's where we may talk about connecting them to the Alzheimer's Project and utilizing their respite care, or seeing if they qualify for maybe elder care, adult day stay. So there's different things out there, and every case is different. And so I can't always use the same steps or the same resources for everyone. So I think that's where my joy even comes in more, because it's a challenge, but also you see the reward in the end, because we may started talking on Monday and we didn't know what to do. And then by Wednesday, we have a full plan in place. So, having that opportunity to be a support person, throughout their journey, it's amazing. And it lets me know that I'm doing my passion, and I'm doing the work that God has placed me to be, here, because maybe my goal, my passion, or my, gift isn't to be a pastor, but it may be just to have a conversation with a caregiver and help them during their journey. So that's something that I'm noticing throughout not even just the classes, but even the phone calls I receive from caregivers.
Yeah. And ultimately, that itself is ministry, right? That's one of the things I recognize and I realize is that where I am right now, this is probably the greatest pulpit that there is, right? And so it also, if you allow it to be, it is an area and a place that God can also use as ministry. And, Tiffany just put on there, she's out in California, but she's saying that's me. There's a lot of resources that people they are just not aware of. And I know you're dealing with all caregivers. So the caregivers that you're dealing with, if I'm not mistaken, it's more than just Alzheimer's. It's Alzheimer's, it's cancer, it's, just different ailments and diseases and what have you that they're caring for. But ultimately, and I often tell people, because I get a lot of these same phone calls, right? I get the phone calls where I have people who are asking because they've followed my journey, the resources I talk about, and a lot of you all are already on my website. But I also tell people, even when you're caring, you have to educate yourself, regardless of what the person is dealing with, whether it's Alzheimer's, whether it's whatever form of cancer, what have you, kidney disease. Educate yourself. I can tell you right now, prior to my mom's diagnosis, I was familiar with the behaviors of
Mhm.
Alzheimer's because they were familiar, because I had, both of her parents who were diagnosed and then other relatives. And so we were of the opinion, or knowledge rather, that this was just something that they called it back then senile, right?
Yeah.
They were senile.
Mhm.
And it was something that we recognized as people got older. But it wasn't until I came face to face and my mom was diagnosed that I realized, like, hold up, I need to educate myself and know, because, there's so many changes that happen. There's so many things that can come along with this. And I encourage education as well, because sometimes, depending on what it is, because that person is changing. And, I'm telling people all the time, don't take the behaviors personal. You
Yeah.
can't, because they have no idea. Today, I'll give you today, for instance. It took a while because my mom's still, and I could tell she's still not 100%. She's still not feeling well. But she has gone from, being nice. I was feeding her. She was eating until like about the last 3 bites, and she just flipped just that quick and went into fight mode. And it's
Mhm.
been back and forth, right? And so you can't take that type stuff personal, because they have no idea what they're doing.
Yeah.
As you educate yourself and you're able to see that, okay, this may happen. And I know for me, whenever something changed, so it's something that I just was not familiar with, I started researching, like, okay, what's going on now? Because I want to be ahead of it as opposed to behind it, because at least if I'm ahead of it, I can recognize and say, okay, this is maybe what this is. And it's like
Right.
that for, I would say, just about everything. There's a way for you to find some knowledge and be able to educate yourself enough, because, you know, there's a lot of change that's going to happen, period. And
Yeah.
so, what somebody who is living with a particular disease, what they don't need is for you to get an attitude because you think that they're becoming a certain way with you, when it's not them. Especially, I tell people, like with dementia, if you know that your loved one was not this mean fighting, like my mom, I'm like, I church my whole entire life. And Pentecostal holiness church, right? Didn't wear pants until years down the
Yeah.
line. But, the first time she cursed, I was like, ooh, we cursing now? And every now and again, she'll get to going, but
Yeah.
you realize, that's just, what's in you gonna come out, but it just goes back. And so you can't take it personal. You educate yourself, you recognize, and you can get ahead of it if you take the time. Google, YouTube, both of those universities right there,
So
you can
much.
get some great knowledge. And I would even dare to say some chat GPT every now and again. You just got to make sure that it's, all correct. But just about anything you need to know to be able to educate yourself. And then you can pull that with people like yourself who are, versed in this stuff, and be able to help yourself even more. But yeah, as this thing changes, it's different. It's different. And even for the strongest ones of us, sometimes it can be it can really pull at your heartstrings, especially like I look at myself and I'm like, I mean, over 11 years, I've seen drastic changes. And so when you're the one that's here and you're watching it, because I work from home as well. When I'm not traveling, I'm here. And so to
Yes.
watch how this disease can change your loved one, and I can only imagine if you're dealing with someone who's living with, cancer, and to see how it changes your loved one, that can pull at your heartstring. And so, I know for me, what keeps me grounded is prayer and reading the word and being able to, I get those moments I had yesterday where I have to, some days you have to pull your own stuff up. Hey, I think they got that thing on one of those reels where the mom is like, hey, get up, and you
Yeah.
have to do that, because if you don't, it will drag you all the way down. And sometimes you need that other caregiver. So these groups become important because you have that other person. Because here's the reality: I might be strong today, and then you might be weak, and I got to pull you up. Then tomorrow it may be me. And so
Yeah.
if you can find, those people that you can connect with, so that when you are in that space, you got somebody that can talk and that can speak some life into you to say, hey, you got to keep going, got to keep pushing, got to keep loving. I tell my own self, that's my tagline. And some days I'm sitting here telling my own self, you got to keep going. You got to keep pushing. You got to keep loving. Got to keep caring. But that's why those groups become important. When it comes down, you're dealing with various caregivers throughout the day, throughout the week. What do you find is your biggest challenge, or what is rather the biggest challenge that you find that caregivers face outside of that we just talked about? What are some of their challenges? What do you think, even as community members, as family members who are not necessarily taking on that load, as church members, because that's an area that we really have to get it in. We really have to help our ministries to understand that you do have parishioners who are they're caregivers.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to that and these challenges, how can the community, in your opinion, I have my own, but in your opinion, as a professional who is, you're seeing caregivers from different backgrounds, not just Alzheimer's, not just cancer, different things, what are their biggest challenges that they're facing, and how can the community help?
Okay, so starting with the challenges, I think the first thing I would say is taking care of themselves, because as you know, like when you're a caregiver, that pulls a lot out of you. And you will hear me say all the time, you can't pour from an empty cup, and they forget to take care of themselves. And when I say taking care, we think self-care is some grand activity,
So
it's
let me
what
let me
works for
push a
you.
pause. I'm gonna push a pause and ask this question.
Yeah.
Right? Is it that they forget, or they don't have enough resource or ability to be able to do it? Because I don't think
I think it's the
personally.
time. I think it's the resources and the time,
Okay,
because caregiving, that's 24/7.
exactly.
You don't get to turn it on and turn it off when you want to. And I think that's what it is not having enough time. And that's what was leading me to the next thing, is saying that finding something small, which could be 5 minutes at night of just quietness, peace and quiet. Like when, for example, for you, if mom is asleep at night, you just take a moment and you just deep breathe. It was like, I made it through the day. We both made it through the day. So it doesn't have to be something super grand, but just making sure you're finding some type of way to pour back into you. And pouring back into you is like maybe not missing your doctor's appointments, because if you don't stay on your health, you can't really take care of the one, that you're caring for. So I see that challenge a lot, but it does come to the point of, when can I do it? I can't really get away from home I don't have anyone, that can come sit with my loved one. They may not know about respite, or that the person may not be at a place where they can participate in respite. That may not be an appropriate level for them. So I think that's one of the main things that I see. And as far as the community, it's about being okay with having those conversations and education. A lot of times when we think about hospice, for example, there's a lot
Yeah.
of myths associated with hospice. We think hospice is just end of life and our loved one is going to transition tomorrow. I even heard one time you're just going to give them morphine, and that's not always true in every case. It really is a unique case. Everyone is different.
Yeah.
But, just being able to have those conversations, or just say, hey, I need help, going to these people, who can I call on? Because a lot of times you may not want to say that I need help. I know in our community, we're big on our moms and dads took care of us. So now, as the children, we're going to take care of them, and I'm going to do everything that I can. And you absolutely can do that. But that doesn't mean that you can't rely on the resources that are available to you. And that doesn't mean that you're less than at all. I
Right.
think, like I said earlier, that says a lot about who you are, because now I understand that I may need some extra help. But I think we have to be more comfortable having those conversations in the community, and then maybe even the faith-based organizations be open to
Yeah.
those conversations, because I come from a background where, and I still do it to this day, I'm going to pray. If I'm going through something, I'm going to
You
pray, pray,
understand?
pray. I'm going to go to God first. But also, I believe that God has blessed us with individuals on this earth to help us as well,
Yeah.
so two can exist at the same time. So I
They
think
can.
making sure that we educate the community. I love being a part of, DCCI, the task force here, because the main goal of that task force is to go around the community and to educate when it comes to dementia. And I'm pretty sure there are other organizations that are out and about spreading the awareness, but we have to be okay with having that conversation and
Yeah.
meeting those that's in need, and figuring out exactly how can I help you? What type of assistance do you need? But with caregivers, I think self-care and guilt is the biggest challenge. And then it goes back to what you were saying earlier about taking the time to educate yourself. No, you don't want to sit there and be reading manuals all day long, because that can become a bit depressing, because
Yeah.
especially if your loved one isn't in a later stage of their terminal illness, it puts in that mind like, oh my goodness, this is what's gonna happen. And then that creates anxiety. But also just learning about it, so when there are changes, how to kind of adjust, because our loved one, they are going through changes, but even caregivers are going through changes, learning how to
Absolutely.
adapt. And that can be a little scary thing to navigate sometimes, especially when you're there all the time. So
And the side of it too that I think sometimes also gets missed as caregivers, I take myself for instance, where prior to caregiving, I did whatever I wanted to do when I wanted to do it.
yeah.
I showed up as much as I could show up. I was there. And so there have been times, and I will be honest, even times still, where you still battle with the fact that, I have a whole car in the garage that I can't even go anywhere. And then the part where, it's like your life now revolves around somebody else or everybody else's life, right? And so sometimes that can be a battle as well, because it's like you still want to do some things, but you realize that where you are right now doesn't allow for that. And so that by itself can be, it can be a lot sometimes emotionally as
Mhm.
well. And so there's a whole lot that goes on with the caregiver as well, that, while you're educating yourself about the disease and what your person is, dealing with, you also have to educate and help yourself, because those emotions are, just like this sometimes, depending on what it is. And, as I always say too, to add on to what you were saying, having the conversations are important, and we as a people just have to get out of that mode of what goes on in the house stays in the house.
Oh,
Some of that
Yes.
stuff, you got to bring it out the house because you're not going to help yourself or your loved one if you don't bring it out so you can find out what is out there. What
Yeah.
for real what's out there, and be able because if we utilize, and some of it, yes, some of it works for you, some of it may not. I've
Yeah.
taken advantage of quite a few of the resources that I've learned about. But even with that, some of it, I mean, when it comes to certain things, you just have to know what's for you, what works for you, and
Yeah.
and make it work and connect with people. And while I'm on that, I'm going to go ahead, y'all. While you're listening to this, you can contact Justice at Big
Yeah.
Bend Hospice. They are located at 1723 Mahan Center Boulevard in Tallahassee, Florida. Phone number 850-566-7439. You can email Justice at jlewis, Lewis, at bigbendhospice.org. Or visit their website at www.bigbendhospice.org. You'll find a plethora of resources out there on their website, but I'm sure that Justice would be open to help you in whatever way that she can. And so, even as we start to kind of get down to the end of this, let me ask you this as well. You're around these caregivers. What are some of the signs that tell you that a caregiver needs help before they reach that burnout point? Because you can get to the point of just, I can't do this no more. I cannot tell you the amount of posts. Some of
Yeah.
these Facebook groups that show up on my Facebook, but the number of posts that I see in some of these groups, and these groups are large groups, but you do have these caregivers. I saw one at one point that was I just started praying, and I sometimes I'll go in these groups and I just put a prayer in. But I mean, on the end of just like, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to be here anymore. To me, that's burnout, right? That's
Yeah.
straight burnout when you get to that point. But, being around them, what are the signs that you can see where they've reached that point where you gotta know you gotta slow down and get help for you?
Yeah. Definitely anger. I see anger a lot. And I always tell, caregivers that anger is a secondary emotion, and so let's kind of process what you're really feeling on the inside. And a lot of it can be disappointment. They may feel helpless. They don't understand why my loved one is the one that's dealing with this. So it presents as anger, but there's really a different emotion, underneath all of that. Isolation, because they're spending, majority of their time caregiving. So they're not out with friends. They may not go visit family that's not, able to assist with the caregiving tasks as well. So they start to isolate. They're not doing anything to pour back into them. And they, like we talked about earlier, it could be the time as the biggest barrier, that's stopping them from doing that. So now they're isolating and they're just staying home, or you're noticing changes in that. And then also depression. Depression is the one that I see a lot. And that's the one we want to make sure that we kind of stay, just mindful of, because depression can lead to other things like suicidal thoughts. And we want to, if we can stop it from getting there, definitely. But those are like the top three I see
Okay.
that leads to, caregiver burnout a lot. And it stems from different things. A lot of caregivers may not have that extra support. It may be a full family of siblings, but only two, are stepping in to help out, or you're having these family meetings and everyone has so much input, but they're not coming over to help with
No,
anything,
no,
and
no.
that's very stressful, because when you're not in it every day, you don't understand how
I
much
have
it
no
takes from
idea.
you.
No
You
idea.
just, it's just opinions roaming around. That's all, I like to say. But I think those are the things that our caregivers are dealing with. And we just got to make sure that we're supporting each other in some type of way. And if you have caregivers that you talk to in your circle and you're noticing changes, you're reaching out, because of course we may can't be on the telephone or texting every single day, because life is life and sometimes.
Yeah, yeah.
But If you're noticing they're taking a step back, you may want to check in on them. Or even the one that presents as the strong friend or
That's
that
what I was
strong
about to say.
family member, those are the ones sometimes that are really struggling on the inside, but they're not voicing it because they have this persona that I have to keep it all together, when in reality, you need support yourself. You don't have to have that superwoman or superman syndrome where you have to take on the entire world and it's just left up to you to save. Like, it's okay to ask for help, but a lot of times we don't even know where to ask or who to ask for help. So those are challenges that I definitely see, or that leads to that burnout.
Or sometimes if you ask for help and you realize that help just doesn't come or doesn't. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I will say, because it's a place that I've been, and I will be honest in saying sometimes I have to fight. You really can be a functioning depressed person. You
Oh,
you can
absolutely.
function and be depressed. And that's something that I have to be extremely careful on. You talk about, I'm like, I am the sole caregiver, and
Yeah.
not like I don't have siblings right here in the same city.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can be a whole lot. And so I'm always doing my best anyway to try to check with me, because the other side of that is you don't want to start holding, because that anger sometimes can come too from just the animosity and
Yeah.
from realizing that, okay, I'm not the only one, but I'm having to take on all of the responsibility with
Right.
it. And so, that's a whole lot. And so, sometimes I can feel when I get to that point, and I try my best to curb that, so that I'm not, because the other side is you don't want to take it out on the person that you're caring for either. You don't want to take it
Right.
out on them, and you don't want to take it out on other people. And like you said, a point that I had here, that sometimes caregivers, they can wear exhaustion as a
Mhm.
badge of honor, and it's not a badge of honor. And what I'm learning is to be able to say, I'm not okay. You know, uh,
Yes.
I will
Yeah.
be okay. When I look at myself, I've had a series of losses all
Yeah.
within a few years. And so that's the one thing about caregiving. It does not matter, and it doesn't care what's going on with your life. It just doesn't stop. And so, somebody can die and you still got to go and care. Something can happen, but I'm like, dealing with loss, then, now I'm in that emptiness slash also caregiving, which is a whole nother beast, especially, my baby's 900 miles away. And so there's a whole lot up in there. So, definitely you have to be mindful and careful and not allowing yourself to get that. But, all of that, don't think that just because everybody that's depressed and they don't look it, right?
No, because
That's
depression
why, that's
shows
why,
up totally different in everyone. You may go to work every day, smile on your face, funniest person in the room, and then you get home and you're sitting in the dark.
yeah,
Like, and that's why I tell you can't, depression is kind of like that invisible,
yeah,
thing where you don't always know it. Everyone is not always sad. And then just another thing I forgot to say earlier is also physical health, because as we know, stress is a killer. And if we're burnt out, overworked, not getting enough sleep, maybe your loved one may be experiencing sundowning. They're getting up maybe 3 or 2 o'clock, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and changes that can impact your physical health. And that shows up in different ways. You
yeah,
may have a cold, or it may just lead to autoimmune diseases. You just never know. So, also, you want to pay attention and making sure, when you can, you're definitely taking care of yourself and your body as a whole.
yeah. I've started back, and I'm gonna pat myself on the back. This week
Yeah.
right here, I started back because I was like, oh, I got to get some things under control. So
Yeah.
I've been doing my exercise, been drinking my water, because I was on juice, but I'm like, got to drink my water, got to,
Yes, drink,
eat
please.
right. and all of that, because at the end of the day, I'm like, no, I want to live long. I don't want to,
Right.
care. And then, because you and I both know caregivers sometimes can leave here before the person that they're caring for.
Yep.
And I'm like, no,
Hmm.
I don't want to be a part of that statistic at all. And so we don't want to do that. And so, all of these things are important. I want to go back just a little bit and talk about the back to the powerful tools, just to ask the
Yeah.
question here. Can anybody participate in
Ab-
the powerful tools as well? I mean, do you have to be a caregiver? Can you be a friend of a caregiver? Can you be somebody that just want to know, just in case, I face this? Can anybody participate in it?
Yes, absolutely. And it's not just designed for, Big Bend Hospice or Big Bend Palliative Care caregivers. So it's open to the community. It's free of charge. The group that we have starting on August 20th, unfortunately, that class is already full,
Okay.
but we will have another class beginning October 15th before we close out the year. So if you're a caregiver, if you know someone, or you may not be the primary, you come in some days or the weekends, whatever, or like you say, you just want to learn information because you just never know. Our situations may change on a daily. You may become a caregiver later down the line. So if you're interested in it, I always will, definitely promote the class and motivate you to sign up for it.
Okay, let me ask this question. Are you all considering the possibility of maybe offering virtual classes at some point? Because I know
So
that
we
there's
do
some
virtual.
people. Oh, you do virtual. Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
So
I
if
said
you're,
that because I know Tiffany is on here, and I
oh,
know in
yeah.
California she's just learning some of the resources and stuff there. So I'm just wondering, if that's something that's offered, if maybe, Tiffany, there you go. That may be something that you can jump
Yes.
in on if they offer the virtual classes. She said they do, so that's a good thing. Because you'll find that in some areas either they're not aware or they just don't have. I think we in Leon in the Big Bend area, we're totally blessed by a lot of things that we have here, because I'm finding out in so many other areas they just don't have them. They don't have those same resources. And so those virtual classes and things can be of help to those who are in places like California. So, okay. So,
Yeah.
hey,
But
you heard it here
legitimate.
again. Yep.
Yes.
And
So
if
definitely if
that's
you
you
want
and
to
you
do
want to
virtual.
participate, contact Justice. Contact Justice. Let her know again her information. It's scrolling, but for those who may be listening, again, you can contact her directly at 850-566-7439 or email her at jlewis, that's Lewis, Lewis, at bigbendhospice.org. She'll be more than happy to assist you and get you the information that you need. Justice, I certainly appreciate this time and this opportunity. I want to do something that I've been doing with some of the past guests that have been on. I like it just for fun, but I've been doing a lightning round. So I'm going to do it real quick with you just for fun before we get ready to shut this down for the night. So just for fun, coffee or tea?
Tea.
All right. Morning or night?
Morning.
Beach or mountains?
Beach.
All right. What's your favorite way to recharge?
I'm a nap girly.
Woo, how
So
I
taking a
wish.
nap, if I don't, and I'm learning like it doesn't take but 30 minutes. So a nap. But also I'm really into fitness. So spending some time in the gym, or I walk 5 miles
A
every other
day?
day. So yeah, so today is actually a day where I'm gonna go walk 5 miles once we get
Okay.
done. But
Woo.
yeah, so yes,
I
ma'am.
did two yesterday, so I might have to up that 3 miles by the end of next month.
Yes.
All right. One word that describes caregivers.
Heroes.
Love it. One word that describes hope.
That describes hope. Oh, wow. It's not one word, but I would say Big Bend Hospice. That's what
There
we
you
stand
go.
on,
There
hope.
you go.
Yes.
All right. And as we wrap this up, what words of encouragement would you give to someone who is feeling overwhelmed today?
You have to give yourself grace. knowing that you're doing the absolute best that you can. Every day is not going to be sunshine and roses. Some days you may want to go out or you go into your bedroom and scream in a pillow, and know that is okay. But you keep going, like Sarah J. Roberts says, girl, get up, or man, get up, do what you need to do. But just know that you have a community that's willing to support you, and there are resources out there that's ready to engage and help you in whatever way you need.
All right. And last question. If there's a caregiver listening today, if they remembered just one thing that you said tonight, what would that be? What would you want that to be?
Oh, wow. We talked about so much. I think it was taking care of yourselves. It doesn't have to be anything extravagant, but just making sure you're taking care of yourself. You deserve that.
All right. There it is. Thank you so much again, Justice, for joining me tonight. And of course, thank you for the incredible work that you're doing to support caregivers throughout our community. I know that I speak for not just myself, but for every one of them that has been blessed to connect with you in some way or the other. Thank you so much for that work. And before we get off, I do want to remind you all of a few things. Of course, I want to remind you of the Caregiver devotional and prayer journal that I have out there. You can find it on the website, as well as some of the merchandise that is out there as well. And then, you can go ahead and go on your streaming platforms. You can find the Hey Caregiver, the album volume 1 that's out there. You can go out there and listen to it on Spotify. It's out on iHeartRadio, Pandora, YouTube, all of them. Go out there. It's just a album that I have done for caregivers, and I think it's one of the best that is out there. So you can go out there and find it. And then reminding you again about the caregiver walks. There's another one coming up on August 15th, right out there at Cascades Park from 9 to 10 a.m. Cascade is located at 1001 South Gadsden Street here in Tallahassee, Florida. So you can join them for that. And of course, the powerful tools for caregivers. We've given you Justice's information, so you can contact her and find out about the next class. And there's a whole lot that's going on there, talking about reducing stress, improving self-confidence, strengthening communication, and so much more. And then I want to also remind you as well, those of you that are in the Tallahassee area, that the Alzheimer's Project, they have opened up 2 new respite sites. And one of them is at Capital Health Plan, that's located at 1264 Metropolitan Boulevard. They're open from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then Bethel AME at 501 West Orange Avenue, they have theirs open on Fridays from 9 to 1. And so this day respite is for individuals with Alzheimer's disease or any other form of dementia or memory impairment. You can go allow your loved one to go there, and it gives you respite. But they do different activities. They have chair yoga and painting. And my mom and grandmother both went when they were at Bethel earlier. So they're back open there, but there's different locations. So do take advantage. And they are also looking for volunteers. So if you have some time that you can, give of yourself, they are seeking volunteers for that. And there's training that goes along with it. They'll be more than willing to train you so that you know exactly what to do. They do have trained staff on hand as well, but that is a great opportunity if you have some time that you can give of your services. And so thank you all so very much for tuning in. Again, don't forget to check out the website at www.priscillajjohnlouis.com. You can find these resources and others out there as well that can help you on your caregiver journey. And then for everyone listening, if something you heard tonight resonated with you, I encourage you to take the next step. Reach out, ask questions, connect with others. You were never meant to carry the weight of caregiving alone. Remember, asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It's an act of wisdom. To learn more about Big Bend Hospice, powerful tools for caregivers and caregiver connection, please visit their website, contact Justice, and do me a favor. They do have social media pages. Go out there and follow them on their social media pages so you can keep up with what's going on with Big Bend Hospice to learn more about it. As she stated earlier, it is not just end of life. There's a lot of palliative care as well as other things that they do offer that are free of charge. So contact them, get the help that you need. It's out there and they are ready for you to take hold of all of that. And every caregiver listening, thank you for the love you give so freely each day. I see you, I appreciate you, and I want to remind you that your well-being matters too. Until next time, remember, keep going, keep pushing, keep loving, and by all means, keep caring. We'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.